Welcome to What's New, your channel for everyday solutions.
Be sure to subscribe, share and like our videos. This is What's New.
Off Belize, a hunt for saltwater fly fishing's top prizes. By JON GLUCK. Look, big school, my guide, Emir, said. He was pointing to a spot 50 yards in the distance. The surface of the water was churning, black tails poking up like so many miniature sails. Hop out, he said. We slid over the side of our skiff and stood in the knee-deep water. It was the first half hour of the first day of a 3-day fly fishing excursion to Ambergris Caye, a small spit of land just off the east coast of Belize, and already Emir had led us to a sweet spot. A swath of emerald green Caribbean lay in front of us. There wasn't another boat in sight. The early morning light was like something Hemingway would wax literary about. Emir nodded toward the group of fish. It's actually 2 schools, he said, and began walking toward one of them. Saltwater fly fishing is more like hunting than fishing, really. It's not about dropping a line in the water and crossing your fingers. The object is to navigate a promising expanse of water until you spot a specific fish or group of fish, the way you would traverse the woods in search of deer or elk. Then, once you have a target, you sight cast to that particular fish. I followed a few feet behind Emir as quietly as I could, but after a few steps, the school apparently sensed us and darted left. When we chased them in that direction, they shifted back to the right. The pattern repeated itself maybe a dozen times, with Emir and me shadowing the wandering mass this way and that way across the flat. Eventually we crept to within about 40 feet of the fish, and Emir issued a gentle command, "What are you waiting for?" I took my first shot. Short. I cast again, a little closer this time, and stripped, or tugged, my line back toward me to make my fly, an imitation shrimp pattern, look like the real thing. Still no takers. After several more attempts, Emir asked me to bring in my fly. Sometimes when the tide is up like this, they like something a little brighter, he said. He tied on a flashy orange and green variation called a Christmas Island. Go again. A few attempts later, my fly landed more or less where I wanted it. Leave it, Emir said, he's coming for it. I could hear the excitement in his voice. Then, set. Oh, that's nice permit, he said, referring to a game fish common to these parts. My reel whizzed, the fish sped for the horizon, and after 15 minutes of giving and retrieving line, I had him in hand. Emir snapped a picture, and we released our quarry. You'd think I would have been elated, and I was. A permit is one of fly fishing's most sought-after species, and this was the first one I had ever landed, a beautiful, healthy 6-pounder. But that fish was just a start. I was still only 1/3 of the way to bagging the prize I was really after, a saltwater fly fishing Grand Slam. There is no official definition of the feat, but a Grand Slam loosely consists of catching 3 of the sport's most coveted prizes: bonefish, permit and tarpon in the same fishery, on the same day or trip. It's a badge of honor, a miniature version of climbing the 7 summits, only without the sub-zero temperatures or hypoxia. Where some purists see an arbitrary non-achievement, others see a fun and worthy goal. Those who fall into the latter camp would be hard-pressed to find a better place to pursue a trifecta than El Pescador Resort on Ambergris Caye. Located on the island's east side, El Pescador offers access to some 400 square miles of shallow hard-bottom, white sand flats, stretching from the Mexican border in the north to Belize City in the south. Set against the small, pretty stretch of sand, the resort's Caribbean chic rooms are simple but comfortable, and the local and seasonal-minded dining is far better than it has to be. But it's the fishery that draws anglers from around the world. Big schools of bonefish, a thriving population of permit and both resident and migratory tarpon all ply these waters, each offering its own challenge. Bonefish, ranging from 2 to 10 pounds, are notoriously difficult to spot, hence their nickname, the gray ghost, and take off like piscine torpedoes when hooked. Permit are sleek, iridescent beauties that typically weigh from 5 to 20 pounds and pull like small locomotives. and tarpon are prehistoric-looking bruisers that can grow as large as 200 pounds and take an hour of arm-burning combat to land. When I spoke to El Pescador's owner, Ali Flota, before my trip, she was downright confident about my chances of catching bonefish and perfectly optimistic about my odds of landing a permit. When I asked about tarpon, however, her enthusiasm waned. Catching one was by no means out of the question, she said, but some anglers dedicate 5 or 6 whole days to that species alone, and still come up empty. I wouldn't call that one a guarantee, she said. After Emir and I landed our permit, we spent the rest of the morning looking for more, to no avail. After lunch, we turned our attention to bonefish. I had fished for bones once before, on South Andros Island in the Bahamas. Over the course of 2.5 days there, I saw about a dozen fish and landed 2 nice ones, the larger of them weighing about 6 pounds. That's typical bone fishing, long periods of boredom punctuated by sudden, adrenaline-pumping action. The bone fishing at El Pescador was of a different ilk. Shortly after lunch, Emir led us to a gorgeous, unspoiled cove that made Gilligan's Island look overdeveloped. A school of hundreds, if not thousands, of bonefish were stirring up a patch of so-called nervous water, a visible disturbance on the surface that indicates the presence of fish, as big as half a football field. What ensued could more accurately be described as catching than fishing. Cast after cast brought a bonefish to the boat, none were bigger than 2 or 3 pounds, but they were bonefish nevertheless. In the span of a little over an hour, we must have landed 30 of them. That's when I let the following phrase slip out of my mouth: "This is almost too easy." Emir went silent. I knew it was a mistake the instant I said it. The faster I dispense with day 2, the better. Emir called in sick, his replacement and I went in search of tarpon but saw precious few, none within casting range, and headed in early. Back at the dock, one of the other guests asked me how I had done. "We saw a manatee," I said. Anglers are superstitious, so when I saw Emir pull up to the dock the following morning, I all but jumped in his boat and hugged him. Emir is a friendly, hard-driving guide with an almost compulsive passion for helping people catch fish. Guiding is in his blood. His father was one of El Pescador's original 4 guides and worked there until retiring in 2013. Emir's son also works at the lodge. Instead of fishing for resident tarpon, as I had the previous day, Emir and I decided to light out for the migratory kind, which are typically much larger and more prized. They are also harder to catch, and had only just begun their annual odyssey past Belize. If we were going to go down on our final day, we would go down big. We motored for more than an hour to a remote island called Long Caye and failed to spot a single tarpon all morning. Sometime around 1 p.m., Emir took us to a place he had wanted to try once the tides were right, a vast, ivory-colored flat, with sapphire blue water. It was one of his favorite tarpon haunts. I picked up my rod, stepped up on the casting deck and began to scout for fish. After a short time, I sensed Emir become still behind me. "Tarpon," he said. 100 feet, 2 o'clock. Focusing on those coordinates, I saw a battleship gray figure moving directly toward us underwater with a slow, almost menacing sense of purpose. My heart rate jumped, my hands began to shake. "Here he comes," Emir said. But a moment later, the fish changed course and headed off. Emir had him pegged as a 50-pounder. There should be a German word for the feeling you get when you spot something you've been waiting half your life to see, but it remains just outside of your reach. Actually, there is an English word for it: torture. Not 5 minutes later, Emir spotted another tarpon of about the same size. This time, the fish swam toward us and kept on coming, 100 feet, 90, 75. The best saltwater anglers can consistently make a cast of 60 feet or more and put a fly within 6 inches of a fish's nose. I, on the other hand, am semi-accurate, some of the time, from a distance no greater than 50 feet. When the fish closed to within that range, I cast. Improbably enough, my fly landed within a few feet of where I wanted it, and I began stripping. "He's on it," Emir said. "Keep stripping." It pains me even now to type this, But the series of thoughts that went through my head at that moment were, I got this. I have my first tarpon. I have my grand slam. But the fish just kept following the fly, stubbornly refusing to eat it. He was, as the saying goes, giving us the middle fin. Pick it up and go again, Emir said. Quick. The tarpon was within 40 feet. I had one more shot before he would get too close for us to cast without scaring him off, but I rushed my next attempt and sent the fly zinging too far. My line landed across the fish's back, and it took off. Unprintable words were spoken. The beer cooler was opened early. We didn't see another tarpon all day. There are certain queer times and occasions in this strange mixed affair we call life, Melville wrote in Moby Dick, when a man takes this whole universe for a vast practical joke, though the wit thereof he but dimly discerns, and more than suspects that the joke is at nobody's expense but his own. I am happy to say I didn't come away from my personal white whale chase quite so cynical. I caught 2 of the 3 species I was after and had a clean shot at the third. That's better than many anglers do in a lifetime. Which is not to say I was satisfied. After dinner that night, in keeping with El Pescador tradition, the lodge manager recognized the guests who were leaving the next morning. There were 9 of us. He congratulated 6 for catching a bonefish during their stay, 2 for catching a bonefish and a permit, and 1, a lovely woman from Houston, for completing a grand slam. I tried to be happy for her. I swear I did.
Welcome to What's New, your channel for everyday solutions.
Be sure to subscribe, share and like our videos. This is What's New.